What's good, everybody? It's your boy Nate Dizzy. In today's video, I wanted to make a quick one about the best settings for playing Onward somewhat competitively. These are going to be good for anyone who's freshly starting out the game and just wants to know where you should start, what settings you should try out in the beginning, and what each setting will do, at least the relevant ones. So without further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing I want to point out is the ability to open up a hidden menu when you start the game. A lot of people, I feel, will not know this, and it is how you will resize the display window on your screen. So what you're going to do is you're just going to start Onward. You're going to go to play. You can launch it in Steam or Oculus. This is irrelevant to your version. So we're going to go ahead and just hit the Oculus VR mode, hit play, and when I hit play, I'm going to hold Alt. Probably should have said that first, but you're just going to hold Alt as the game launches. It's going to take a minute for the game to launch as per usual, but you're just going to hold Alt this entire time, press Alt, and we'll just wait. I'll fast forward a bit here just to make it a little bit faster. Alright, so once the game launches as you're holding Alt, you're going to be greeted by this Onward configuration menu that you would normally not see otherwise. And initially, it's going to be set to probably the max or whatever your screen resolution is. So for me, it was at 1920 by 1080, and it was not windowed. Now, in order to basically get the best performance in game, because you don't really need the view on your screen, and even if you're recording, if you're on Oculus, I would recommend mirror as opposed to using this. What you're going to want to do is go ahead and just get it down to the lowest possible resolution. So I went ahead, and the lowest for me is 640 by 480. You're then going to hit windowed. That way, this will make it a lot easier whenever you're trying to do stuff outside of the game. So just go ahead and hit windowed. You're going to want to make sure that it is on the lowest graphics quality. It probably already will be, but just it's worth noting. And leave it on your main display. This is also how you change your inputs if you so wish to do so. But once you're done with changing these settings, then you're going to go ahead and hit play, and we'll move to the next section of this video, Inside VR. Alright, so once the game is finished loading up, you will be greeted with the Onward menu here. And you're going to look all the way over here to Settings. Open up the settings, and you will see all of this big grouping of settings. Now, I just want to go over first the graphical settings, and so we'll talk about, how you should be setting this. I personally don't use the anti-aliasing at all. This will affect performance, and I find that Oculus's native anti-aliasing is better, and I don't use that either, and that's not because of performance. It's more just because I don't like anti-aliasing in games. I feel like it just blurs everything and gives me a headache after a while. So I would recommend leaving anti-aliasing off unless you just happen to like it and it doesn't give you a headache. And if you did turn it on, I would leave it at the lowest setting. The next thing is texture resolution, and I will say there is a trade-off here. All the way low would not be recommended by me. Super sampling would be best. I'm not going to go over super sampling in this video. I'm just going to go over the actual Oculus settings, or the actual Onward settings. But look for a video around the same time that I post this one about how to use super sampling depending on your device. So anyway, texture resolution, you do get a trade-off. If you look over at that wall, you'll notice that it gets brighter if you go up to medium, and it gets even brighter if you go up to high. So you will see that in certain situations you're going to want to trade that off, but there is a performance hit, the higher up you go, obviously. I would personally recommend medium for the short of it, because you get that boost in brightness, which really helps on maps like Downfall, but you also don't have the performance tax of using high or above. Also, the biggest jump is from low to medium. Shadow resolution I would leave to low. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure that only refers to the shadows made by the player, and you will still get some on low. They're just a little bit jagged and weird looking. On the Discord, they said that soon that will affect a little bit more, but I'm pretty sure that's all it's affecting right now. Shadow cascades all the way to low. Again, with shadows, you're just not getting very much, and it's just not worth it. You can leave shadow distance to 50 meters. That's perfectly fine. I don't think it makes that big of an effect on your performance. Now, dominant eye is which eye you're going to mostly be aiming with. You can use both eyes to aim, but this is your dominant eye. It also controls which eye is shown on the desktop view and spectator view. So right eye or left, just whichever one you're going to be using the most. I use right. Dominant hand, and most people will be right-eyed. If you're right-handed, you're more than likely right-eyed. Dominant hand, again, same thing. Right or left if you're left. Hand models. This is going to just be, are your hands rendered as hands in game or as just this kind of a deal as the controller. I like hands. It just is more immersive. Weapon grip is either going to be a button press or it's going to be proximity. I would recommend button press. It's just better overall. You can let go by releasing the button, grab by holding the button. Holster type, I personally recommend hip, but some people like chest. I just find that when you start putting utility on you, grenades and things like that, the chest holster does get in the way. So I would recommend hip. You can go with chest if you're already used to it or if you think you like it. Now, real quick, gun smoothing. This is horrible, okay? Particularly scope smoothing. I accidentally enabled this setting not realizing, and for a while was playing with it on, and this is absolutely terrible. Your gun will move smoother, but the trade-off is that it will not keep up with your controllers. So, for a little while, because I didn't even know this is what this was doing, I was actually wondering why when I would move my hand, the gun would not keep up with my hand, and that was absolutely because of the scope smoothing. Now, scope smoothing, as I said, is much worse than gun smoothing. If you do want some form of smoothing, I would use gun smoothing. You may want to do minimal if you're using a stock. You can do the default, but if you are using a stock, I'd recommend minimal at the most. I would honestly recommend disabling it altogether, especially with a stock, but you can use gun smoothing if you're comfortable with it. But I would get into the shooting range and I would test that out before just going with it. But definitely disable scope smoothing. This is going to make you completely unable to keep up with sniping targets. You'll be able to hold more still, but at the same time, you're gonna have to basically lead your target even more than you already have to. Player height, I would recommend setting this. I'm not actually 5'8", but I found that if I set it to 1 inch below my actual height, it tends to work better. So I set it to 5'8" because I am 5'9". Gun stock. Now, if you're using a gun stock, a physical gun stock in real life, disable this, obviously. There's pretty much no use to it if you are. But if you're just using controllers, definitely go ahead and use virtual gun stock because this works really well. And even if you're using a gun stock, it's kind of worth testing out. But the problem is that with the virtual gun stock on, you can't do a little bit more fancier stuff with like moving the gun away from your body and stuff. So if you have it disabled, you can kind of put your arms out like this and blind fire, and you can do things that you couldn't do otherwise as easily, without it on. So for me, using a gun stock, I disable it. If you're not using a gun stock, I would put it on. If you're using this, you basically don't need gun smoothing because this does apply some degree of smoothing on its own, just by having that gun locked to your shoulder position. As far as the radio position, I would go left personally because when you're holding a gun, especially if you're right-handed, I would use whichever is your alternate hand. Because if you're shooting, you can take your left hand away, use the radio. You can really do it to either side, either shoulder, this side or this side, but I prefer left. For the watch position. So this determines where your watch is going to be. You cannot see it here, but if you have it on left bottom, it will be right here on your wrist, which is good because when you have your gun out, then you're going to be able to see your watch at all times. So you're going to use your watch for time. You can use it for directions, but if you're going to use it for directions, it doesn't display. You can't really use it while it's attached to your gun, but you can quickly let go of your gun and find it out and then grab your gun again. So I would say left bottom or right bottom. So if you're left-handed, I would go with right bottom. If you're right-handed, I would go with left bottom. That's just my choice. You can also go top, but again, with top, you're going to have to move your hand much more, and seconds, even milliseconds mean life or death here. So Holster side, I would go with the dominant. You can go on to your left or right. I would go dominant, and that will just put it to whichever dominant hand is. You're not going to really be like pulling out your pistol too much and shooting it while holding something else. And even if you are, I mean, it's pretty easy to switch hands in this game, because if you're, say I'm grabbing something, I can put this hand up, grab it, and it will switch hands. I don't have to let go with this one and kind of like fiddle with it, which I really love about this game. Turn method, so you can go with a smooth turn or something, or snap turn. I recommend against it, because if you ever wanted to take this game more seriously, you can't use that. I'll make another video talking about what's called an indexing tile, and this is just a tile that you put in the middle of your play space and always keep one foot on. That way you can always stay in the middle of your play space, and that's what I would recommend in terms of turning, is just live in real life turning. If you're really used to smooth, you can use it, but do note that if you ever want to be competitive in the game, you can't use any of these turn methods. You have to turn in real life, so I would recommend just disabling right off rip. Hold to grip. Okay, so this has to do with, why is this disabled? So you use your grab input to grab an object, use it again to drop. Oh, okay, that's why it's disabled. So hold to grip is basically, yeah, I don't know why that's disabled. I might have accidentally disabled it, but hold to grip basically just means that you have to hold the grip button down in order to hold something. And you have to, and you just release it to drop it. Whereas if it's disabled, you just hit the grab button, and then when you want to drop it, you hit the grab button again. I prefer to feel a little bit more natural in grab, like I do in real life, which is to hold the grip button down while I'm holding something. So that's why I do that. Object grab. Oh, that might be why it didn't matter, because I have object grab mode. Okay, so this just has to do with what you're using to pick up objects. Grip is pick up both objects, but all types of objects with grip. I would recommend this setting. You can also use this to differentiate between large and small objects, because you would basically use the trigger instead of the grip button to hold smaller ones. So if there's stuff on the ground, this might be better, because you can differentiate between a large object and a small object just by which grip button you press. But personally, I like grip because this game's pretty good about where you grab to grab a particular thing, and if anything, you can grab it real quick, throw it out of the way. Knife damage, I would say no input. If you do require input, you'll have to hold the trigger while knifing somebody. If you put no input, you will not have to put any input. So if you're holding the knife out, say this finger's the knife, you hit something with it with no input, you do not have to press a button. With input, you would have to hold the knife out and push the trigger in order to do somebody. I do prefer to require input on syringe use. That way I don't accidentally syringe myself if I'm trying to pick up a teammate and I only have one syringe or something like that, because then they could maybe give me their syringe or something. Basically, I just want to require input. That way I can control when the syringe is used. Now, something to note is that with the syringe, you don't use trigger to actually enact it. You actually use the thumbstick click instead. So you're going to have the syringe in your hand, fingers of syringe, you're holding it with your grab button or your trigger, depending on your setting. You actually press the thumbstick down in order to use it. Gun controls, for me, I prefer AB thumbstick, because this allows me to do some other things that I need to be able to do, but I won't go into that now. AB thumbstick, it's basically drop magazine with A, close bolt with B, and fire mode toggle is clicking the thumbstick. This is my preferred method. You can also use only the thumbstick, which it tells you there. Thumbstick down, up, and left, center if using snap turns. So there you go, same kind of thing, but I recommend AB thumbstick. This also translates over to more games, so that's also why I'd prefer it. Sprint control, I would go with the single click. This means that you have to click your thumbstick once in order to sprint. There's also double, and there's also outer edge, which I believe is whenever you put the thumbstick to the outer edge. I'm actually going to test that out. I would either go with outer edge or single. Let's see, so locomotion. So this depends on what you're used to. Head makes it so that wherever you turn, that's how you're going to move. That's the direction you're going to move if you press forward. Offhand is your left hand, or right hand if you're left-handed. But if you're right-handed, offhand is left hand, and And basically, so if you say I'm pressing forward, if I turn this way, then I'm going to move that way. If I turn the controller this way, I'll move forward. The problem with using hands for... You know, I am getting ready for work. The problem with using your offhand to control yourself is that if you're holding a gun, you may be pointed in a different angle. If you're looking too far up with the gun, then you may be actually pointing far enough to where it registers as a backwards. Like if they're really far above you, it's hard to tell which direction your hand's pointing. There are some benefits that you can kind of like sprint more sideways with and still be able to look where you're look this way while you're sprinting that way. But overall, I would say for especially a new player, go with head locomotion because it's just easier to know, okay, I hold forward and I look where I want to go. You can still go left and right, you move slower, so try to get used to holding forward and using your head to quickly look back and forth to go the different directions, or just get used to using offhand, but like I said, personally I recommend head locomotion. So that's about all for these settings. The other thing, you know, you might want to tweak volume, but that'll depend on your headset. It'll depend on a lot of factors, so I'm not going to go into that. But that's pretty much it for this video. There will be some other things I cover in regards to Onward and basically how to get your setup to the point where you're most comfortable and you can do the best possible. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And yeah, I appreciate you watching till the end if you did, and subscribe for more Onward and VR content as well as other gaming related things, you know, all kinds of things. Just make whatever I feel like making, and I'll catch you next time. Nate Dizzy, out.